All right, well, I got tasked with talking about gambling addiction. So that is what maybe oh, there we go. Well, there's the pups and there's stuff. We got it. All right, so I'm going to talk about the part on gambling addiction and kind of start us off with just some definitions. I was asked to kind of lay the foundation. So most of you are either loved ones, people in the field, people in recovery. You know, by definition, addiction is a chronic, treatable, progressive disease. So we're going to talk about that and hold on to that as we go through the different types of disorders. So for gambling, there's the preoccupation, right? You can pull out the DSM-5 and look up the criteria, but really it comes down to there's the preoccupation, the need to do it, right? That obsessiveness, typically with increased amounts of money. Ben touched on that. Unsuccessful attempts to stop or cut down despite negative consequences, and also chasing the losses. So many times people think it's chasing the win. A lot of times it's also chasing the losses, and the brain studies show that it's just as much fired up when you lose as when you win because you're just still chasing it. Lying to conceal the extent of your gambling involvement, jeopardizing or losing important opportunities, relying on others for financial bailouts, payday loans, loved ones, and oftentimes committing illegal acts. So, gambling for the compulsive gambler is defined as follows. Any betting or wagering for self or others, whether for money or not, no matter how slight or insignificant, where the outcome is uncertain or depends upon chance or skill, constitutes gambling. So I guess I should have told you, I am someone in recovery for gambling addiction. And so this is read at every meeting. And what I can tell you is when I first heard this, read this, I was like, huh? And I'm like, how, like, kind of like harm reduction. Like, what do you mean? Like, my kids are in sports and I sell raffle tickets and, you know, maybe I want to go to a meat raffle. And it really is what you define for yourself, the same as with other addictions, right? It's the harm reduction approach. Lynn shared a powerful story this morning about how that saved her life. So it is something that you will need to talk about with whoever you're working with or for yourself. There's a lot of similarities between gambling addiction and other process addictions that you're going to hear about today. The onset, it's going to be the lifetime patterns, the consequences. There's higher rates in adolescent and young adults than among older adults. I think of oftentimes friends of my kids would talk about how they're getting together to play poker, or even young adults, right? They're going to the casino because they finally can, or they're doing March Madness, those types of things. And for me, as a mom and someone in recovery, I'm like, eee, like, what does that mean for you? Like, how much money are you taking to the casino? Are you leaving your debit card at home? Right? Like, it raises a lot of red flags for me. And both, be it substances or process addictions, chronic relapsing behavior, it's going to get worse over time, right? I mean, the debt's going to get worse, the loss, the lying, the deceit. So it's going to continue to whittle away on the same things that drugs and alcohol do. The shame, the self-esteem, the lying, the values and morals that go out the window. And there's less positive reinforcement and more negative, of course. So you stop using, you have a whole shit ton of anxiety and depression, and the same thing happens when you stop gambling, right? It's like, holy crap, what did I do with my life, and how am I going to fix this, and how am I going to get out of debt? There's 5 components that I'm going to touch on: salience, impaired control, social problems, risky use, and effects of behavior. So I'm a brain person when I work with my clients, so I talk a lot about the brain. Lindsay and I do a co-occurring group in the community. We talk a lot about the brain. It is the single most important thing, the drug, the gambling, in that person's life. It kind of goes up the hierarchy of needs till it's right at the top, and nothing else really matters. So the brain tells you that you need it. Someone's at work thinking about when they can do it, or they're on the computer or their phone doing it at work. That preoccupation and that compulsiveness and obsessiveness is the same for process addiction. Impaired control, of course, it's going to be, I'll only lose $100. I'm only going to take $100. I won't use more than that. I'll stop after the next spin. I'll stop after the next win. Right? We make ourselves all kinds of empty promises through any type of addiction. And that's the same thing. We can recognize the negative consequence, right? Like, if I take out $100, I'm not going to be able to pay rent this month, but it could turn into $2. So maybe I should do it, right? We just don't ever believe, there's so many heads shaking. We just don't actually think it will happen to us, the same as in drugs and alcohol. Social problems. So including strained relationships, there's the isolation, there's the difficulty with distractions in social settings. I remember prior to gaining insight into mine, I had a loved one who was like, you seem really preoccupied, like you're watching the gambling machines the whole time we're like sitting here trying to talk. And I'm like, really? Not even aware that I was doing it. Family and friends are upset. There's, of course, maybe some declining invitations for social activities, or you just don't want to go because you want to watch the game. Risky use, of course, across the board. It poses a risk for us and others. Taking out the loans, using money meant to be for something else. Many people with compulsive gambling have a lot of, well, I need to go back and win what I lost, not considering that you're probably going to lose more. You're going to go and try and win it back, and it doesn't happen. Writing bad checks. A lot of people who you will see headlines, of course, of people embezzling money or this or that. Oftentimes it is related to some type of gambling addiction. And of course, just like with drugs and alcohol, the psychological and physiological effects reinforce, of course, the addictive behavior. So you're constantly trying to mirror or repeat that pleasurable experience or that surge of dopamine and chemicals in our body and brain. All right. Approximately 14 million people in the U.S. have gambling addiction, with only about 8% seeking help. One of the reasons when Jennifer and I in the planning committee were talking about these breakouts that I really pushed for us to talk about cross-addiction is because many people don't screen for this. As clinicians, treatment centers don't normally, it's not a normal screener that people even going into residential treatment get. And oftentimes the process addictions become very prevalent when the drugs and alcohol are taken out of the equation, and that's what they go back to. I worked in residential for 15 years, and taking the drugs and alcohol away, we would see the eating disordered, different type of process addictions really kind of come to light. 96% of people who have gambling disorder have at least one co-occurring mental health or substance abuse issue. That's a lot. And then when you consider how few are actually being screened and it even being identified as a treatment goal or a discussion or a risk, recovery management type of thing. So, and then it's, the bottom just points out that oftentimes the more our mental health, substance use, stressors become in our lives, the easier it is to fuel the gambling as an escape. And of course, then it just perpetuates and it gets worse in the chronic and more loss. Dual diagnosis is, of course, to me, when I was putting some of this stuff up here, I'm like, well, that just kind of makes sense. But I think it's a good reminder that the higher dual diagnosis leads to higher severity and relapse, financial ruin, family strain, stigma, right? I already have shame because I'm a drug addict, and now you're telling me that I'm a gambling addict, or I have to put my phone down and detox my brain from the mindless scrolling that I do for hours at a time. What are you talking about? Like, how many things can I have wrong with me? Gamblers are 15 to 24 times more likely to attempt suicide. People who, of course, are dual diagnosed are going to be even higher. But I was shocked to look at the number and realize that's the highest of any addictions, is the gambling, right? Because you can't, the idea of seeing your way out of the hole, the money, the loss of houses and marriages and jobs and whatever it may be. And then of those with gambling addiction, 73% have alcohol use disorder and 38.1% have drug use disorder. That's a lot. That's a lot when you think about how many people we see or run into who identify themselves as people in recovery or people struggling with addiction. That's a lot of people, and it's a lot of unmet needs. So adaptive coping skills essentially means positive, right? We can find all kinds of negative ones or maladaptive ones. You want to look at active problem solving, seeking support. It's one of the beautiful things about this event. It's about the recovery clubs that we have. We want to make sure that we're doing some cognitive reframe, dealing with the shame, the guilt. Accommodation, it just means adjusting our expectations. That's kind of that harm reduction idea. We need to actually adjust how we view what a success is. We want to make sure that we're working on regulating emotional responses. This starts, quite frankly, from little on, but many of us didn't get it when we were little, so now we're in adulthood and we don't know how to regulate our emotions. It's part of the healing process that needs to happen with any addiction is, what are your feelings? How do you deal with it? How can you deal with it in a healthy manner? Stress is one of the risk factors for any addiction and relapse. So you want to learn how to manage stress, your stress level, and do it in a healthy manner, be it going for a walk or exercising, reading a book, walking away, deep breathing. I wonder what TA is supposed to say. Talk to someone maybe? Huh. Yeah, ta-ta. Ta-ta. And then, look at the front row is really laughing at me, thinking, what the heck? She really didn't go through this. Love you guys. All right, and then it's really looking at the bigger picture, the visualization. Kind of like Mark was saying, what's the purpose? Finding purpose. So what does your life look like if you don't do this and you do this, and giving those alternatives and the healthy coping skills? Of course, there's always barriers when it comes to any type of addiction or recovery. About 14 to 23% of patients from substance use are actually screened. That's a bother. Very few. So there's a huge social cost, of course. $14 billion are spent gambling each year. There's a tax that goes on gambling, which people may or may not know. But it goes kind of, for lack of better term, a slush fund. It goes into just this pot that's not particular or specific to gambling, where other people, other kind of departments have that specific kind of flagged a fund to be invested back into advocacy or prevention and so forth. For gambling, it goes literally into like a nondescript fund. And interestingly, very few people view gambling as a very serious addiction. So it's important for us to really look at how we are going to start screening, advocating for it to be mandated. As with many screeners, you can ask 20 questions and it'll be a matter of 3 minutes and you will be able to identify if there's something more to be explored. It would be amazing to integrate treatment of compulsive gambling into mental health and substance misuse. And of course, part of the reason we're here today is to reduce the stigma and recognize it's not a moral failing. And then, of course, always supporting the healthy coping skills, be it behaviorally or cognitively. And now, thank you. Yes? Oh, thanks. I thought you were asking a question. I was like, oh. And next up is going to be Lindsay Lowy, who is going to talk about digital detox. Yeah.
Okay, I don't know what side to stand on. Sandy stood over there, so maybe I will stand over here. Hi, everybody. How are you? Good. If you have a personal computer with you, please put it under your chair. Yes, that's a phone. So what we call a phone, okay. And the teens over here who have been teching out like all day finally put their phones down because I said I was going to call them out on this. My kids are teenagers. They love that I'm so passionate about technology. Right? Love it. Okay, so today I'm going to just touch on digital detox. I'm not going to go too in depth about technology addiction because today is all about what we can do in a world that I think all of us are already very aware that we have a tech problem. So Steve Jobs, when he introduced the first phone, he said, every once in a while, a revolutionary product comes along that changes everything. How many of you hear this quote or see this quote and think back to how long ago that was when computers and personal phones really started coming out? It has literally changed every aspect of our life. So I want you to take a minute to think about what the word time means for you. And I just want you to put that on the back burner and just let it simmer. What does time mean for you? What does that represent in your life? So this is our team of technology, and this is only 4 of many, many things. How many of you consider that when you swipe your card at a kiosk, that is technology? How many of you consider that the stoplight you go through, that's actually technology? The car that you're driving, every aspect of our lives has technology in it, right? So when the car was first invented, that was technology. And we have gotten desensitized and accustomed to a lot of the things in our lives that we probably don't even really consider as being technology anymore. When we hear technology, we tend to think our phones or video games, right? So education and productivity. Our kids do not carry textbooks anymore, do you? What do you carry? Chromebook. Right? So this makes me so sad because in knowing how the brain works, there's actually something incredibly meditative. It's actually been researched and proven and discussed. Reading left to right eyes going back, left to right, eyes going back, left to right. How many of you have heard of EMDR? Eye movement desensitization. That's exactly what reading is doing. Reading is making you go from left to right and back. It's moving your eyes. So you are triggering regions of your brain just by reading that we use in therapy a lot. There's also part of reading in a book. The black print on the white or opaque paper also has been shown to have meditative properties. So even if you have a Nook or a Kindle, those are great technology. You're still keep in mind that you're taking away some of what your brain really needs to calm down and quiet itself down. Entertainment and social platforms, I think those speak for themselves. Wearable tech, I've got mine on. Who all has theirs on? How many of you get annoyed by your watch sometimes? Yeah, I actually do too. I've started really switching back and forth. My watch does hold me accountable on exercise, but I do find myself getting annoyed. Healthcare, e-commerce. So again, what else? Think back over the years. We talked a little bit about cars and airplanes. So the problem, right, because I'm not going to stand up here and say that technology is bad. I think technology is fantastic, and I think a lot of us would agree. It has really, really helped shape and change the way that we heal, the way that we operate, and there is a problem. Tech overuse changes the way that our brains are wired. So our kids are growing up in a society and in a world with technology. And while there are benefits to that, right, like coding and things like that, it is also, unfortunately, harming other regions of the brain. Technology is one of the first things and fastest things to shut down the region of the brain where empathy is carried and formed and housed. So while we can say that, well, video games are a problem or technology is not a problem, we have to pay attention to the regions of the brain that are being shut down and rewired. So we have kids that are growing up now with lower thresholds of empathy, lower thresholds of resilience, because they have had technology rewiring their brain development. So adults spend approximately 11 hours a day on technology. And again, this doesn't even include the little forms of technology, such as swiping your credit card or using Apple Pay. Teens, 7 to 9 hours a day. What were your screen times at? Teens. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So he said, I asked what the screen time was, and he said, well, summer or school year? Yeah. So that's a problem. And kids ages 2 to 5 or 2 to 3 hours a day. How many of you have been out to eat and you see a toddler on an iPad or watching something, or you see parents on their phones, right? And I'm obviously a parent and 2 teen boys. Sometimes I would rather they just go tech out because I've kind of reached my limit for the day too. So again, please know that this presentation is about balance, not don't use it. So impacts on the developing brain. Our brain develops bottom up and back to front. So the first region of our brain to develop is the survival brain, and we're all born with this, right? And we know that our triune brain, all 3 main areas, aren't fully developed until we're about 28, 30 years old. So what we're doing is technology causes ongoing triggering of the brain's reward system, which is directly linked to the amygdala or their survival brain. So like Sandy was talking about gambling and other addictions or abuse patterns, technology is keeping the reward center alive, which is triggering the survival brain, telling us we need technology in order to survive, right? And our kids, because their brain is back here, and it's not here yet where they can think through to consequences, They need the technology. They need their phone. They need their video games. Okay, you guys can probably read all this. So that persistent multitasking as well. My watch is going off. I'm trying to engage with all of you. My kid's on, well, he's not, but he's on his phone in the background. So my brain is trying to multitask because it's constantly being triggered by all of these signs or warnings. And that causes my cognitive performance to slow. Yes, so technology use offers our brain less opportunity to just rest. And the resting state is very, very, very important. Our sleep is also greatly impacted, and sleep is like really when we should shut our brain down, but our brain can't even get there anymore because we're so impacted by technology all day long. So, solution. How many of you have heard of the stages of change? Yep. So this is going to be very familiar. I love when you all know this. So pre-contemplation, contemplation, planning, action, and maintenance. Those are the 5 stages of change. And this is the cornerstone, I really believe, for any cognitive or behavioral modification. Pre-contemplation with digital detox. Nope, I don't have an issue. I'm fine. Other people are the ones, right? It's like you've just no awareness. And I think this is where a lot of our kids and teenagers are because it's so normal for them that they don't have an issue. It's not a problem. Contemplation. Okay, I think I fit this whole idea, this narrative of being on my phone too much or being behind a computer too much. I should make a change. Planning, I need help doing this. What do I need to do? What are some of the plans that I can make to help me gain some traction and some action? Action, I'm committed, I'm doing it. And then maintenance. I have these spread out a little bit because action and maintenance is a really long phase, and maintenance is obviously lifetime. And you might fall back. You might have to go back to action, or you might have to say, I need to get back to a different strategy. So you're back to that planning. So step 1, self-reflection. There are a lot of technology and phone assessments out there that are really coming more onto the scene the more this conversation keeps happening. So it's really about self-reflection, honesty, accountability, and identifying your blind spots, right? Hey, do you think that I'm on my phone too much? Do you think I'm watching too much TV? Do you think, right? And be open to that feedback instead of being defensive, because people who love you care and they're going to try to help you. Detox from tech, step 2. I'm not going to say that comment. There is like this new term among the younger generation, raw dogging. It's not a new term. This is why I wasn't going to say it. This is why I wasn't going to say it. Yes. So they refer to it. My kids are mortified. So they refer to it. It was different for us, I think. But I've seen more where this is when they are just going to go completely abstinent. They're going to, people are like on airplanes. I'm just going to sit here. I'm not going to watch a movie. I'm not going to listen to anything. I'm just going to sit. I see a lot more, 20-something really promoting the idea of like going and just sitting in nature with nothing and forcing yourself to have nothing in front of you for an extended period of time. This does detox your brain. We know that the warnings about no screens 2 hours before bedtime, that's so that your brain can have a little breather, a little bit of detox before it needs to go into its sleep cycles. So identify the areas. So when I say this, what can you abstain from, right? If you need your phone for work, that's probably going to be pretty hard to abstain from that. Checking out at the grocery counter, that's going to maybe be pretty hard to abstain from. So what are the areas that you can cut back on? And then step 3, this is kind of that maintenance. Continue to have the awareness, the mindfulness, the accountability, and then we're back to the word time. Okay, this quote. Can anybody guess who said this? The human spirit must prevail over technology. Any guesses? Nope. I wish I came up with that. Albert Einstein, right? So I love this because this reminds us how far back technology goes, and it's kind of reassuring that they were back then they were having the same thoughts, the same concerns, the same worries that we all have today. I think our narrative is just changing around what the technology is, and we're learning much more about the impacts of the technology that we have today. So I just wanted to put a plug in here. The Women's Fund is doing the Smart Social Project right now. So this is like a months-long initiative that they're doing. And it's really all about smart social, smart technology use, S being self-aware, M being mindful, A being authentic, R responsible, and T truth. We're going to go back to the word time before I wrap up. Am I okay? Oh, God. Okay. Go back to the word time. Anybody willing to raise their hand and just share what time means for you? Yeah. Value. Family. Never enough of it. Anybody else? Can't get it back? Procrastination. Yep. Quality. Perfect. I love all of these. So time is an acronym that we use when really helping people kind of start to detox or cut back on their technology use. Time, T, time limit. Give yourself a time limit. I always recommend if you're going to zone out and death scroll on your phone for 30 minutes, set the microwave timer or set another timer where you have to put it down and get up and turn it off. So give yourself some limits. Investment. How are you investing? How are you looking at that time? M, meaningful. Make sure that what you're doing on tech is meaningful. And E is enrichment. So have it be enriching, meaningful, intentional. So, okay. That's it. What? Of what? I think I'm out of time. Can I share a quick example? Okay, Sandy wanted me to share this example. So I had a client years and years back, and high school male, really struggling with depression, low self-esteem, low self-worth, and I started to investigate more about his technology use and all of the different areas of technology that he was engaged in. The school district that he was at, Winneconne, I have a couple Winneconne people here, really took the time to try to understand the technology overuse that this student had and how it was impacting his mental health. So Winneconne actually worked with us to do a digital detox, and he no longer had a Chromebook. Teachers worked together to print out material, and then at home, obviously, right? So every part of his life, all the systems really worked together. I'm not kidding you. Within 2 months, I wasn't even able to clinically diagnose him with depression anymore. because he detoxed his brain and his body and his nervous system to the point of really helping heal some of the mental health symptomology that he was having. So that was a quick example. Okay, thank you, everybody.
Hello. I'm not going to be raw dogging it like Lindsay did. So I have a script. Okay. Thank you for being here today. I'm going to have an additions-based conversation with you. What this means is that we're not here to take things away or place blame or simplify experiences that are anything but simple. Instead, we're focused on what we can add to recovery-oriented care. Awareness, curiosity, compassion, and practical tools that expand how we understand the people we serve. When we talk about addiction, we often think of substances first, but today we're widening that lens to include eating-related disorders. Patterns that frequently coexist with substance use and mental health challenges, yet are often overlooked, minimized, or misunderstood. This is not about diagnosing or labeling people. It's about understanding patterns and risks so fewer people fall through the cracks, and so recovery can address the whole person, not just the most visible symptom. Eating-related disorders are becoming more common across all ages, genders, and backgrounds. Many people struggling with these behaviors never receive help, especially if they're already being treated for something else, like anxiety, depression, or substance use. Among people with alcohol use disorder or addiction, eating disorder rates are substantially higher than the general population. Studies suggest that 30% of individuals with an eating disorder also meet criteria for a substance use disorder. Conversely, eating disorders are found in an estimated 25% of those seeking treatment for addiction, compared to 5% of the population. So to put that in perspective, in the general population, 1 out of 20 people suffer from an eating disorder. But in the AODA population, 1 out of 5 people will suffer from an eating disorder. That's alarming. Part of the challenge is that many eating behaviors are socially reinforced. Restriction, weight loss, or overexercise are often praised, even when they're causing harm. This makes eating-related disorders easy to miss and difficult to talk about. Additionally, eating disorders often develop quietly and adaptively. They don't always look disruptive at first. In fact, they look organized, disciplined, or even healthy, especially in a culture that values productivity, self-control, and thinness. Just like substance use disorders, eating disorders do not resolve on their own. They tend to intensify under stress, especially during transitions like early recovery, relapse prevention, or other major life changes. If we don't intentionally look for them, we miss them. And when we miss them, recovery becomes more fragile. When we hear the term eating disorder, many people think of extreme or visible cases. I don't think my slides are correct. ED and substance use. I see. Okay, we'll roll with it. That's okay. Okay, when we hear the term eating disorder, many people think of extreme or visible cases. In reality, eating-related disorders exist on a wide and fluid spectrum. These patterns can include chronic dieting, restriction, binge eating, purging, compulsive exercise, or emotional eating, or cycles that move between control and loss of control. Many people don't fit neatly into one category, and their behaviors may shift over time. What's important to emphasize is that eating-related disorders are not defined by body size, weight, or appearance. People of all body types can struggle deeply with food and body-related distress. The key indicators are psychological and functional. Distress, rigidity, preoccupation, loss of flexibility, and interference with daily life. When food or exercise begin to dominate thoughts, emotions, and self-worth, it's no longer about health, it's about survival. While there are far more categories of eating disorders than I am able to present today, I do want to hone in on these particular three: bulimia nervosa, anorexia nervosa, and binge eating disorder. Bulimia nervosa has the strongest association with substance use, with studies showing that up to 40% of people with bulimia have a co-occurring substance disorder. 40%. Anorexia nervosa appears in up to 18% of those suffering from a substance use disorder. And binge eating disorder is the most prevalently seen amongst those suffering from alcoholism and is the most missed amongst the male population. We've talked about cross-addiction. Cross-addiction refers to the presence or substitution of multiple compulsive behaviors, or the substitution of one compulsive behavior for another over time. At the core, these behaviors often serve similar functions: emotional regulation, distraction, numbing, control or relief from distress. Trauma histories, attachment disruptions, and neurobiological changes in the brain's reward system all increase vulnerability. When one coping strategy is removed, such as substance use, without adequate emotional support or skills development, the nervous system still seeks relief. Another behavior often fills the gap. Food is a particularly common substitute because it is accessible, socially acceptable, and necessary for survival. Without awareness, cross-addiction can look like progress on the surface while distress deepens underneath. There is significant overlap between eating-related disorders and substance use disorders, both clinically and neurologically. Eating disorders and substance use disorders co-occur because both involve compulsive behavior cycles, loss of control, and difficulty tolerating distress. They also share dopamine-driven reward systems within the brain. Some individuals use food to manage cravings, anxiety, or emotional discomfort during early sobriety. Others may use substances to suppress appetite, manage weight, or numb feelings related to food and body image. For some, substance use and eating-related behaviors alternate across different phases of life. For others, they coexist simultaneously, reinforcing cycles of shame and secrecy. This is especially common in early recovery, when familiar coping strategies are gone and new skills are fragile. If we focus only on abstinence, we miss signs that distress is being redirected rather than resolved. Without awareness, someone may appear stable while another addiction quietly takes hold. Recovery is not just about what someone stops doing, it's about how they are coping. There are several reasons eating-related disorders are under-discussed and underdiagnosed. Medical systems often focus on weight, lab values, or acute symptoms rather than patterns of behaviors and internal distress. And behavioral health settings may prioritize substance use first. Culturally, many disordered behaviors are praised. Restriction can be labeled as discipline. Overexercise can be framed as dedication. Weight loss is often celebrated without curiosity about how it was achieved. Additionally, shame plays a powerful role. Many people feel embarrassed or weak for struggling with food, especially if they believe they should know better or already be in recovery. As a result, these struggles are often hidden, even in treatment environments designed to promote healing. Warning signs are often subtle and best understood in context. These can include rigid food rules, anxiety or irritability around meals, avoiding social eating, mood changes tied to food or exercise exercise that feels compulsory rather than restorative. Other indicators include increased secrecy, black and white thinking about food, difficulty tolerating flexibility, or using food or exercise as the primary way to manage emotions. Rather than focusing on isolated behaviors, it's important to look for patterns over time. Ask yourself, is this behavior increasing rigidity, or decreasing quality of life? Is it expanding someone's world or shrinking it? These questions help shift focus from judgment to understanding. Screening doesn't have to be complicated. Brief tools like the SCOFF questionnaire and E26 can be useful, but simple, normalized check-in questions can make a big difference. Questions like, how does food function for you when you're stressed or overwhelmed? Do eating or exercise ever feel out of control? Have your eating patterns changed since entering recovery? When these questions are asked routinely, calmly, and without assumptions, people are more likely to be honest. And actually, many individuals have never been asked these questions directly. How we respond also matters. An additions-based response avoids focusing on weight, willpower, or compliance. Instead, it asks what the behavior is doing for the person. What need is being met? What pain is being managed? Validation does not mean endorsement. It means acknowledging the function of the behavior before discussing alternatives. Recovery is supported by adding skills for emotional regulation, consistent nourishment, safety, structure, and connection. When we remove coping strategies without replacing them, we increase risk. Change happens when people feel supported, not shamed. Families, peers, and communities play a powerful role in either reinforcing shame or supporting healing. Avoiding comments about weight, appearance, or food morality can significantly reduce pressure. Modeling flexibility, balanced behavior, and self-compassion helps normalize healthy relationships with food and body. Holistic recovery recognizes that eating disorders don't exist in isolation. Effective care often includes mental health care, nutrition counseling, trauma-informed approaches, and education for both individuals and their support systems. When food and body relationships are addressed alongside substance use and mental health, recovery becomes more resilient, more humane, and more sustainable. I'll close with this thought. When we widen the lens of recovery, fewer people fall through the cracks. Each of us has the ability to add something, whether that's curiosity, screening questions, compassion, or a willingness to look beyond what's most obvious. These additions may seem small, but they can fundamentally change someone's recovery experience. Thank you for your time, your attention, and for the work you do every day to support recovery, healing, dignity, and long-term wellness.